Hello once again, watchers of good movies. My name is Nick Pell and this is my review of Gretel and Hansel. This is an indie horror film based on the well-known fairy tale of Hansel and Gretel. General premise of that story is that we have these two kids, Hansel and Gretel. They are in the woods. They stumble upon a witch's house, which has lots of food and I think in the story sometimes candy. And she feeds the kids, wants to get them plump so she can cook them, eat them. The kids overcome the witch and they escape. That's the general gist of the story. That's in the very basic premise, the gist of this movie. The only difference is that this takes a much more realistic tone, I suppose, in regards to kind of the time period that's set in, and just a much more darker and just kind of drearier setting for this film, because these two kids, they're turned away from their childhood home by their mother. They're just kind of trying to find somewhere to go that they can just belong. They eventually stumble upon the witch and events take place over the course of the film. Probably the strongest part of this film, in my opinion, is the atmosphere, because just right from the get-go it establishes this really dark and eerie atmosphere to it because you're in the woods, and the woods always have this weird essence to them. The Blair Witch worked on this. The Witch movie from 2015 did the same thing. It just has this presence about it, and the film makes a lot of use of that presence in this film because you can just have this sense that someone is watching these two children, and even when the witch is on screen, they're interacting with her for about the first or the second half of the film. It just continues to have this overwhelming tension to it in that you're not necessarily sure what's going to happen. Sophia Lillis, who you probably know from the It movies, she is the main star. She plays Gretel in this movie. I thought she did a really good job. I'm really curious to see what she does in the future with horror and other elemental or other genres of film. Alice Krige also does good as the witch herself, and I really enjoyed their relationship throughout the course of the film because it's something that I wasn't really expecting, is that the witch almost kind of takes Gretel under her wing to an extent. I won't say how or why or anything, but they've developed this relationship which is kind of interesting, and was one of the better parts of the movie in my opinion, and just how it ended up working. The film also does introduce some interesting twists and ideas which I didn't really expect going into it. I thought it was going to be a different type of movie than it ended up being, and so that's why I'm a little bit torn on it, to be honest. But it does have some interesting concepts and ideas, I thought. The movie does start really slow. The first about half an hour is just them walking through the woods and going from one place to another, pretty much. It kind of reminded me of A Plague Tale in a sense, if anyone played that game from last year, without the plague part of it. There's also some not great CGI here and there. It's not very present in the movie, but there's a few scenes where it does make use of CGI, and it just doesn't really look the best in regards to kind of like somebody coming out of a pool of water or blood or something. Yeah. And then, despite the atmosphere, which I thought was honestly the best part, it's not really that big of a horror film, or it doesn't really have what I would consider it to be a horror film. I would probably mark it more as like a suspense thriller almost, with some horror elements, because there aren't really a ton of scary moments. There's some disturbing things here and there, but it's also a PG-13 horror film, so it doesn't really, or it can't really do a lot in that regard. And so, yeah, overall, I thought that Gretel and Hansel, it's fine. It didn't really do what I expected it to do. It doesn't really have the big horror scenes or horror elements that I was kind of hoping to get out of it. The atmosphere, again, very well done. I thought it was probably the best part. And then Sophia Lillis and Alice Krige have a really interesting chemistry between the two of them throughout the course of the film. So yeah, those are my thoughts on Gretel and Hansel. Let me know yours in the comments down below. Did you like it as much as I did? Did you hate it more than I did? Let me know. What is your favorite fairy tale come to film adaptation? I would be very curious about your thoughts. Like, favorite, comment, and subscribe once again if you so choose. I appreciate it immensely. Follow me on Twitter. A link is in the description. And ring that bell for any notifications that you might be interested in for future videos on this channel. As always, my good people, my name is Nick Pell. And once again, keep on watching.